Hello, water signs. I'm so excited to be doing this reading for you guys. So I've picked out a crystal to do a mini crystal reading for you guys. I'm also going to pull some cards for you from the Modern Tarot deck. So let's go ahead and get started. I pulled this blue light for you guys, and this stone is a lot about finding calm and grounding even when, kind of like these big tides come along, kind of riding the tide. And I'm going to interpret this a little bit for you guys. So what I kind of picked up is that right now we're actually in the hazel lunar cycle, which kind of brings up a lot of emotions, but especially for you guys are going to be feeling it the most. So your emotional realm is going to basically feel like a really big ocean where there's sometimes these big waves and it crashes, and then there's also sometimes these subtle waves where it kind of feels like nice and you find this like sense of grounding and calming. Just being aware of this during this time is going to be really important because you will learn to be more gentle with yourself and your emotions because you guys feel things that much more. Sometimes maybe you feel the need to try to suppress it a little bit from what I call the beach ball effect, which basically is like if you've ever had one of those big blow up beach balls and you're in the water and you try to push it down, basically what will happen is it'll like fly out the side because it kind of just like happens uncontrolled, which is kind of like what happens sometimes with your emotions because you guys feel things so intensely. What happens is you basically want to divert your attention towards something else that maybe, will be distracting for you. Or you just kind of try to avoid the emotion altogether, especially if it's feeling overwhelming because it's kind of just lingering there. It feels like you're dealing with it even if it's in little bits. And then kind of what happens is the beach ball effect, which is like you try to push it down and then it ends up flying out the side and it happens more uncontrollably. So it's almost like what I want to call almost is like a controlled cry. So like, for example, if you ever had times where in a day and you're having an off day and you just feel like crying, and what happens is basically, you hold in a cry and then later on you end up crying like really intensely. It's kind of like that beach ball effect is like letting yourself cry when you need to cry, letting yourself feel these like, maybe sometimes difficult emotions when those come to surface rather than, saving it all up for like to boil over, like that big cry, like that beach ball effect. And I think especially during this cycle, you're going to be noticing that coming up a lot more where your emotions seem to be a really big factor in your life. It's going to probably influence a lot about your relationships, whether that be your friendships or your romantic relationships, your family time, and things are going to feel a lot more sensitive to you. And I think it's going to feel a little bit intense, so maybe sometimes to the point where you're like, yeah, I just kind of want to avoid this. But what I suggest is to actually be really gentle and just really appreciate that emotional part of yourself because it basically just means that you care. You're human. You're meant to move through these processes as they come up. You're not meant to beach ball it, put this beach ball under the surface in the water because as soon as you let go, it's just going to fly up. So what you're meant to do is to work with what you have been given. So if you are given a difficult emotion, it's not up to your ego to try and try and avoid it and just like save it for later. Actually trying to just like move through things as they come up will feel a lot healthier. It almost feels like this like kind of energy happening in your body. If you ever have done any Kundalini work, this is going to be a really great time where your emotions actually really benefit you because if you move through them as they come up, you actually will be tapping into this kind of Kundalini energy, which is going to be really allowing you to create from this space of really healthy flow. It's going to feel like almost like what happens when we kind of do that beach ball effect where like we store these emotions is actually that the next emotion that comes after we've kind of stored the other one feels 10 times more intense because we haven't dealt with the thing from before. It's almost like if you have issues with getting tasks done, it's like when you put aside the one task, it seems all fine and dandy until you get another task and you put that off, and it kind of keeps making your load a lot more heavy. So what I suggest to you guys is to really be conscious of your emotions during this time and lean into them as they're coming along, like really riding this kind of energy, almost like what I was calling with this hazel cycle, kind of like a lazy river, right? It's like when you're going on a lazy river, sometimes they're uncomfortable where, you can bump into other people and get some scrapes and stuff, but it's like, do you ever try to like work against the flow and like paddle backwards? No, you have to kind of like ride the lazy river, and yes, sometimes it'll be uncomfortable, but it's better that way than to just like try and fight the current, if that makes sense. So being really conscious of your emotions during this time, working through them as they come up, and then actually from embracing that intuitive and like emotional, like what your emotions need from you, whether that's to cry, whether that's to grieve, whether that's to create. Like healing through creativity right now will be a really great asset to you guys. So if you're feeling the need to like get something out, maybe, you know, writing a poem or writing a little story about it, or getting outside, taking some photos of nature, whatever it is, like creating during this time will really help you to channel these emotions in a way that sometimes can feel really intense with having to deal with it. And then the other part, which I was going to say, and I'm trying to remember what I was going to say, because it was like kind of like coming through, like everything was kind of like leading into one another in regards to your emotions. But I think basically what I was going to say is that in regards to the cycle, I feel like overall, if you try to ignore what your emotions are asking of you, you will kind of be stepping away from what emotionally you need. But even like physically, like sometimes you need to physically cry, and even what you spiritually need. But as you start to embrace the emotions and embrace that is actually like a strong asset to you, you tap into this more spiritual energy where things are in this flow. You kind of like appreciate things as they come and go, and you're kind of working through it in this like way that this like kundalini energy, which is like very much like this flow energy, comes through you, and you actually start to create from this place of being in this flow. Like, have you ever been writing an essay or doing work, and you're just like, you're in the flow and you're in it, and just things are just coming out of you and it's working so well, versus the days that you're just like, no matter how hard you try, it just feels like there's a block. That block is kind of what happens with you guys when you don't allow this energy to move through you, versus kind of being like allowing it to move through you, honoring it and validating it as it comes up. And then you get in this more intuitive place where just things are flowing out of you, whether that's, you kind of step into this place where you're honoring your emotions, you're honoring your spiritual aspects, you start honoring, the physical aspects, your relationships, your creativity, and things just start flowing. So I have a feeling that, even though you're going through this difficult time, just know that there is like this light at the end of the tunnel, which is very hazel energy too. It seems like you guys are very in tune to like tree energies, at least with the hazel cycle. Like you seem very in sync with the hazel cycle right now, which is like the hazel tree lunar cycle, which started about last week. And it's going to continue into September. So just being conscious of this, and as you kind of start moving through these emotions in like this way that feels healthy and supportive to you, and not suppressing them, it's actually going to help you feel a lot more spiritual, and things are going to start flowing. New opportunities are going to come up, and it's really like, it's kind of weird, but it almost feels like you guys have this almost like energetic or creative block that happens when you try to control your emotions, because it is so intense, which is fair because it's so intense you're almost like, I'm scared to feel it all. But then once you actually, it's like the fear of feeling it is actually so much worse than just feeling it, like just allowing yourself to cry or just allowing yourself to be upset in that moment, because then you kind of move through things and it opens up this kind of like almost like your heart chakra, I feel, and then it just allows things to flow into you. So you actually might find that if you've been going through this emotional time, things are about to start kind of flowing your way if you are open to kind of like working through your emotions as they're coming up. And you know what? That's not always easy. Either way, this block will clear, but making it more easeful on you would be to be supportive to yourself when you're going through these intense emotions, versus trying to convince yourself that you shouldn't be feeling this. You know what I mean? One of my favorite kind of things I usually reference with people is like, for example, if you find yourself thinking to yourself, oh, I shouldn't be feeling anxious, like I don't want to feel this way, I should just, I should just go do something else, I should just like, skip past this. Just think to yourself, like, what would you say if your best friend said that to you? If your best friend came to you and said, oh, I shouldn't be feeling anxious, I shouldn't be feeling this way, would you say, yeah, you're right? Or would you be like, no, it's fair that you feel anxious, it's okay to feel this way, I'm here to support you and I'm here to help you in any way I can. Like being your own best friend. When you find your ego talking to yourself and being mean, just like watching that dialogue and being kind to yourself as you move through these emotions. And I'm going to go ahead and pick you guys some cards from my Modern Witch Tarot deck, which I was just cleansing. I have to pull out the last little card that's a little straggler here. So I'm going to go ahead and shuffle for you guys. I feel like almost like the intention is to kind of be open to whatever needs to come through, but mostly to maybe give you guys some guidance on setting some intentions, or just seeing what might need to be addressed, because maybe there's some underlying issues that are feeling like they need to come to surface. Okay, I'm going to focus on you guys. It feels like it's like these 3 cards. Okay, we're going to flip the cards. One of these actually just came up in the last reading, which I think is really interesting. So the first one we got here is the Queen of Pentacles, And we got this like little rabbit here. We have like this person kind of sitting in this natural landscape. There's flowers all around them, and they're kind of just like they're owning what they have at this moment. And to me, I feel like this is really relating to your emotional realm, is like working with what you have. And when you work with it and you don't work against it, and you trust the support of your angels, and like, you know, even with these mountains, that's an indicator of kind of like maybe sometimes going through challenges, where you go through challenging times where it feels like a really big incline and you're making progress, and sometimes there's that dip. It's kind of like that roller coaster effect, is like you're kind of working with all these elements. You're working with your spiritual kind of team and your guides. You understand that there's just difficulties, like these mountains, kind of like these things to overcome. But overall, when you work in unison with it, when you work with, you know, if this pentacle represents your emotional realm, then this like love and gratitude and abundance that's represented by these roses that are surrounding you starts to open up. So the more that you work in relationship to what is happening around you, especially within you, within your spiritual realm, within your emotions, and you embrace it, the more you're going to find like these like roses kind of like in little interesting areas of your life where you're gonna be like, I never looked at it this way. Or like, oh, this is kind of like opening up this new channel for me. This is opening up me to creativity or new friendships or relationships, whatever it is. But it really feels like when you trust that kind of like emotional inkling, it's gonna really start like leading you down this path where things start opening up for you, because you're not so blocked off of trying to control your emotions, and it's not like living within your body. It's like you're processing things as it's coming up, and you're working with it in a relationship to it versus working against it, if that makes sense. We also got the Hierophant, which is a great energy to be in. I feel like, once again, I kind of talked about this, where when you're working in relationship to what is happening within this cycle for you, you're actually going to like lean into an area where you're going to be kind of discerning and working from a place where you're like, okay, I know this doesn't feel good. And you're really feeling things, and you're like, okay, I'm discerning what's working for me and what's not. Like, what is it that I truly need right now? Where is this stemming from? And you start to get to these deeper issues that you maybe didn't feel like you had the capacity to work through before, because you were kind of avoiding it a little bit. And now you're going to enter this like stage where you're kind of like, okay, no, I know this doesn't work for me. I know this will make me feel better, so I need to validate this. It's about like validating your experiences and kind of like discerning what it is that you truly need. Like, what will make you feel supported? What will make you feel loved? And you know what? Sometimes you don't always know the answer, but it's about leaning into like your spiritual aspects of yourself. Like, what is your intuition telling you? So your intuition's like I want to make a painting, and you're like, hey, well, I'm not a painter. I'm not a good painter. It's like, you don't have to be in order to create. You don't have to be just these like labels in your head. Why can't you just create to create? Like, why can't you just go take this class just because you're interested in it? Why can't you hang out with this person just because you kind of like felt that connection? You know what I mean? It's like it's like stepping in this place of like, you really truly know what's gonna like really work for you, and or not work for you, but it's like you're stepping into this place where you really know what's gonna serve you. And you don't have to know the outcome, you don't have to know exactly where it's gonna take you, but you trust that intuitive part of yourself that's saying, I know that I don't know everything, I don't know the outcome, but I know I need to at least try this. I know that there's something in me that's like, you know, saying that this doesn't feel good or that this does feel good, and I have to follow that. So it's very much about like trusting yourself, like very much building this trust and like discerning what it is that you truly need to like work with and work like and kind of release from your life. You also have the Knight of Cups, which whenever I get this card, it always reminds me, I don't know why, of The Alchemist. If you've ever read that book. If not, this is a interesting reading where you're getting recommended a book. You can maybe get it from your local library. But what I see in this card is almost like there's someone who is very experienced with kind of like alchemy in a sense, which is basically like making something from what seems like nothing. So I think for some cases with you guys, you're kind of in a cycle maybe where sometimes you have your mind set so much on something that you kind of block out any opportunity anywhere else where it seems like there's nothing that exists there. And this card is basically indicating to you that that very place that you might have blocked out, that you know, like, because you have your eyes so set on this prize that everything else like is just kind of a distraction. Like maybe it's like, for example, you're like, I'll be happy once I get this job or get in a relationship, whatever it is. It's like you have now said that everything else will not make you happy, and so thus there's nothing to create there. But being open to like alchemy, making something from what you think is nothing, is very, very powerful. And I feel like there's kind of like that sense for you guys right now is like, how can I work with what I think there might not be, like how can I work with stuff even when I think that there's nothing there? And I think, for example, like when you take a pen to paper, like that is alchemy. You're taking something from this ethereal state, whether you call that your mind or your intuition or source, and you're alchemizing that. Or, you know, if you're like, oh, I've always kind of wanted to share my creations, or I've always wanted to share like spiritual readings, or I've always wanted to share this part of me, it's like that is alchemy. There's this like intuitive inkling within you that's being like this desire to create, this desire to share, this desire to make something out of nothing. So this is a really good time to kind of focus on like the idea of alchemy. What does that mean to you, and what is it that you've closed yourself off of because you've been so focused on some sort of external goal? So being really open to different possibilities and something emerging from nothing. Because for example, if you're so fixed on like, let's say getting this one job and then another job opportunity comes up for you, that's like a form of alchemy. It's like something coming from nothing. And then it could be easy for you to be like, well, no, I really just want this job. And it's like, okay, well, like, have you even thought about this job? Like, have you explored, like, or are you just like so fixated on like only this one thing making you happy? You know what I mean? It's not to say to settle. It's more saying like, before you write something off, really dive into what that could look like for you if you took that opportunity, if you took that chance. Like, for example, let's say you're like, you know, you want to take like a class in pottery, and then, you know, this other kind of opportunity comes up where, you know, you can learn a little bit about making your own book. And you're like, okay, well, I really want to take this class, but I don't know if it's going to align for me at this time. And there's this other thing, but I'm so focused on this that I'm just going to work until this, you know, I can learn pottery, for example. It's about like kind of being open to other experiences as well, and like having happiness within this moment versus like placing it on an external source. Because anytime you base happiness on something outside of yourself, it does not exist. It exists in this moment. So it's about being open to where this like alchemy is transpiring, where things are kind of like, you know, even though it's not exactly the trajectory or like the schedule you thought might happen, it's the schedule you might need in this moment, because this moment is all you have, right? So just honoring what comes up for you now, and being like noticing it, being like, oh, I never thought this could be anything, or I never thought to like take this course, or like meet this person in real life, or like I never thought I would want to meet a new friend, or learn this new skill. Like whatever it is, it's like be open to that something coming from what you thought was nothing. And this to me is like a different version of alchemy. Alchemy is usually just, yeah, creating something from nothing. In this case, it's more, I think, specifically talking to like how you might have closed yourself off from things. So you're like, that's nothing. And it's more your mindset towards things being like, this is everything and this is nothing to me. And starting to realize how much that closes you off from certain opportunities, and how much that pigeonholes you to only having happiness in one external place when it actually doesn't exist there. It exists in this moment. And to that, I also kind of want to recommend The Power of Now. If you guys haven't read it, it's a great book. Once again, you can probably get it at your local library, and I highly recommend reading it. It's an amazing book. And I think that's it for you guys' reading. Let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment, tag a friend who might want to receive their reading, whether they're a water sign. I'm doing all the different signs. If you'd like to leave a donation, I really appreciate it. It's not necessary, but it does help me to continue having my small business and doing things as accessibly as possible, sharing these readings with you guys, and still keeping everything by donation. So thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll talk soon. Oh, right. And then if you guys want, you can also go book a personal reading through the link in my bio. Has the place to donate. It also has, you know, different personal readings if you want to learn a little bit more about maybe something you're going through, or just like getting some more personal kind of insights. And I'm also doing a tree course, so if you're interested in learning about like the hazel tree cycle and some other tree cycles that we go in, there's no obligations. Everything's really accessible. Everything's by donation. And yeah, I think that's actually it. I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.